Welcome to another episode of Pivot and Prosper. I'm your host, Joe Nahay from LFG Business Group. I'm really thrilled today to talk with Mike Allton from St. Louis, Missouri. He's got extensive experience in digital marketing and social media history. He advises brands to be cautious with new platforms, but emphasizes the urgent need to adopt AI to stay competitive. Now, I spoke before with Mike, and I'll tell you what, we probably could have kept going on and on for hours and hours and hours about marketing in the industry and strategy. So I'm thrilled to have you on my podcast here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I know this is going to be what I think and hope will be an important conversation, but also a fun one. So this will be great.
I love it. And educational too. I know I'm going to learn something positive out of this, which is what has me all hyped up. I don't need caffeine this morning. I got you in a conversation. So let's learn a little bit more about you. I want to learn about and share about your business. What's been the biggest surprise while operating as a business owner, even in the last 6 months, some challenges, and how would you prepare for maybe some hurdles that you've gone through if you were to go through them again?
Yeah. So without going into my whole life story, I've owned my own business for over a decade. I started the social media hat in 2011 as a blog, as a freelance consultancy. I've developed some digital products and consider myself a bit of a content creator. So I've got sponsorship revenue and that sort of thing that comes in. And I started by writing about social media marketing. That was my focus. I also talked about content marketing, email marketing, search engine marketing, and have tried different focuses. But throughout that entire journey, there's always been that constant thread of social media, which means I've often talked about the platforms themselves, not just the main ones that we think of like Facebook and Instagram, but other platforms have come and gone over the years. And this is why I kind of dubbed myself the unofficial historian of social media. Those of you listening, you might not have ever heard of Google Plus or Blab or Periscope or Meerkat, but these were all social platforms that over the last decade, millions of people use these platforms. Millions of people found success and millions of people found challenges, not just in learning the platforms, but when those platforms went away, that became a challenge for those businesses. So I often caution people to take a slow but steady approach and perspective when it comes to new social networks and new technologies, and have that kind of wait and see perspective, because I've had to change a couple times, not only which social networks I was using, but which ones I was focused on. I mentioned Google Plus. Those of you who don't know, Google had a social network. It was probably 5 or 6 years that they spent developing it and investing in it and growing a user base, and it stopped, I want to say in 2015, Google shut it down. And at that time, about 2015. And at that time, I had 250,000 followers on Google Plus. So that was a very sad day in my existence as a business and as an entrepreneur, to just literally overnight lose a very significant audience and a very significant source of revenue. I developed a reputation and authority and that sort of thing on that sort of platform. So I have that cautionary tale. And in addition to that, over the years, I've had to pivot several times in terms of what I do, what I focus on, who I'm trying to reach. And that in itself has been a bit of a challenge. I mean, there's that mental challenge of, gosh, am I pivoting too often? Should I not pivot? Should I not try to change? Should I keep focusing on this direction, this audience? So those are some of the challenges that I personally dealt with, and I talk about them a lot in my content and try and share the mistakes that I make so that other people don't have to make those same mistakes. They can go off and make their own new mistakes.
Yeah, well, I surely have made. If I had a list of all the mistakes I made with social media marketing, let me tell you, we'd be here for a long, long, long time if I had to list them all, right?
Right.
But hey, I'm thrilled to continue and ask more questions here. I mean, I see one thing that came to my mind too. In today's day and age, there are loads of social media platforms where there's free opportunities, non-paid, where you can just put up tons of content on all levels of platforms, right? And they say there's no excuse to not get started. Really, it's way different than years ago, right? However, the other end of that is you can't just start blasting random unorganized, unfocused chat GPT spit scripts out left and right where you're posting infrequencies, etc. And there's loads of gurus on YouTube, right, that say all you have to do is get started, right? Well, there's consistency. It's what message are you putting out? What type of people are you targeting? Do they find it engaging? Are you following a framework? Is there a hook, a story, a guideline, a call to action, a this, or that, a testimony? We know all those things, right? It's a bit more than just I create an account and I'm throwing tons of stuff up on, and the next thing I don't know, nothing's having traction. There has to be a strategy behind it, and that strategy is, interesting enough, changing every month, few months, but the core essentials are there. Talk to me about have there been any specific platforms, in your opinion, that maybe a specific strategy worked a year ago and now it's okay, that's way overplayed. We have to rethink outside the box, the dynamic, and change how we use organic content to interact with folks?
So I love everything you just said, because there was a lot of nuance and perspectives that I actually want to pull out of what you just said. Because first, you're absolutely right. There are gurus out there or experts, and some of them are very well-meaning, who will say the best thing that you can do as an individual is just get started. And the problem with that approach is that it is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a one-platform-fits-all approach. It's usually best served when you, the listener, are an extrovert and you've already identified within yourself what it is that you love to talk about. You already have a passion and an interest and a certain level of knowledge. So if you love talking about Bitcoin and you are happy to just jump on a video and start talking to the Ethernet about Bitcoin, the mantra of just push play, just get started will work great for you, because that is the kind of strategy that supports that perspective and that philosophy and that individual. I'm an introvert. So just getting on camera with no plan or script or strategy, that doesn't work for me. That will not jive for me or anyone who else is like me. It also won't work if I don't know what specific topic I want to talk about. I can't just open up my phone and go live on TikTok and not know who it is that I'm talking to or what I'm talking about. I need to have that plan, that strategy. And the other concern there is that just not everyone's going to be comfortable on camera or diving into a new platform where they haven't figured out what I like to call the norms. I didn't invent that term. It's a sociological term, but it's not often applied to social media networks, even though it fits perfectly. A norm is an accepted guideline. It's not a law. It's not something that you absolutely must abide by in order to continue using the platform. But as a society, unless you live, for instance, in an HOA ruled neighborhood, you can let your grass grow pretty long if you want to. If there's no law against it, you can let your grass grow. But your neighbors won't appreciate it. Your neighbors will want you to have your lawn trimmed at a very reasonable and regular level so that your grass and your lawn looks great and it doesn't detract from their value of their home. That's a norm. We have norms and we have mores and we have laws in society, and we have norms and we have mores and we have laws on social media. And if you want to be successful on social media, you have to have some idea of what the norms are. What are the best practices? What are the tactics and the strategies, to your point, that are working today? How should I actually post? If I'm using ChatGPT, which isn't a bad idea, but it in itself has best practices and norms. There are good ways to use ChatGPT to create content, and then there are lazy, bad ways to create content using ChatGPT and AI. And you know that. You can spend a lot of time. Right. You can spend a lot of time informing ChatGPT or your AI of choice who you are, who you serve, what you do, and what are the topics and interests that you want to talk to about. What are the pains and the challenges that you want to talk to? And you'll get some really great ideas of what to speak about on social media or in your content and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to go into social media marketing with that understanding that first I need to understand who I am as an individual, as a brand. What am I comfortable doing? and then spend some time on one or two or more of the platforms. And you're going to have to do some self-education. It's going to take some time, and you're going to figure out who to follow and who to listen to. And that will help inform you as to what you actually should be doing on those different networks. Because to your point, those strategies do change on a regular basis. The strategies that we're working on Twitter and now X years ago, they definitely don't work today.
Oh, yeah.
LinkedIn has changed and evolved over the years. Facebook has evolved over the years. Facebook, it used to be a couple of years ago, if you were doing a regular live video on Facebook, you would probably be killing it. Today, that's probably going to be a challenge for you. The other thing that I should say, though, at this point is that your type of business, B2B, B2C, the vertical that you're in, that will also help dictate the strategies and the tactics that work for you. If you are a consumer-facing business or you are an influencer yourself, the things that you can do today that will work are very different from a B2B SaaS company that's targeting mid-market or enterprise businesses, right? If you're in the fashion industry and maybe you are an influencer or a content creator, absolutely go live every single day talking about different fashion and trends and clothes and those kinds of things. That won't work if you're in B2B. So it's really important to have that initial understanding of who you are, what you're good at, who you're talking to, the industry that you're in and the industries that you're serving, and try to find individuals and brands in those spaces that you can learn from.
I love it. Very well said too. And again, educational too. I'll probably use that word many times throughout this show. I think I'm a big advocate. I've been posting a lot on LinkedIn, and just 2 years, right? We went from a world of there were loads of tools that could automate messaging where sees a profile, waits 10 minutes, sends a message, etc., back and forth. And it worked. Hi, I came across your profile. It looks really interesting, etc., etc. Now, as soon as those words come up, that's like spam alert immediate to anybody. It doesn't matter what it's you. Like there were 3 different levels of thinking outside the box, right? There's the initial, okay, great, we can send automated DMs. Now it's okay, those aren't working as well. Okay, let's go to targeted area, maybe groups on LinkedIn. Let me talk to them. Let me come up with that area. Hey, saw your attendance or question in a recent webinar in this group. We're getting really tied down. Great. That tightens down your audience of people you're automating to. And now people are there like, I know, I get tons of these all the time. So it's like, okay, how can I change up my outreach? Then AI comes along. We'll do icebreakers. Cool. But is it helping? It's easy to, and even with, you mentioned too, the change of time with Instagram. I was recently talking with someone about just what our attention span, right? It's less than a goldfish now. People scrolling on Instagram, these hooks, these reels, what's pulling people in? What stopped me a year ago doesn't stop me now. How many times have we scrolled through? I work with a lot of coaches, consultants, business owners, thought leadership brands, etc. And I come through, I see an ad, business coaches, executive, next. Yeah. They all start the same way. Got to think differently, right?
Yeah. You've got all these issues with, to your point, you're talking about, top of funnel, you're talking about mass outreach, how do you scale those kinds of things? And it's going to be an internal struggle as long as there is social media, because social networks aren't designed to support mass outreach, cold outreach, scaled outreach. They're not meant for that. They're meant for relationship building. So one of the networks I've been using a lot more recently is Threads. And I'm really appreciating Threads because it's really more of a throwback to Google Plus and the days when the most important thing was the conversation between 2 people. That's it. That's where the focus is. It's on conversations with individuals who are like-minded, who have a shared interest in one thing or another. It's not TikTok trying to show you a 60-second video that you might find amusing. It's an algorithm that's trying to show you a person who is interested in something that the algorithm knows you too are interested in. And it determines that through all your normal activity. If you like something, if you post something, if you leave a comment. So the more you use the network, the more the algorithm knows about you. But once it starts to understand who you are and a couple of the things that you're interested in, I really appreciate that when you open Threads, your feed is filled not just with the random posts of the people that you happen to have followed, but it's filled with posts from people that you're not following that are talking about topics that I'm pretty sure you're going to be interested in. And if you spend any time on the platform, you will be interested in those topics. So all of a sudden now you're engaging with people that are of like minds, that are really interesting. And you will start to get the same thing if you're posting. So it really exemplifies what social networking is supposed to be about, and that's building relationships and making those one-on-one connections.
I love it, and I agree. The power of even those one-on-one connections and a community behind it as well, too, right? Of a group of like-minded folks who can back each other and say, yes, this is dedicated for me, and I feel like it's not going out to mass amount of people, but the messaging, the power of using the word "you," right? It's coming right to me,
Yeah.
which is powerful. So for folks who are growing a business, called solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, could be a product or service. Let's just say a service for the time being, right? And they don't have any social media presence yet. This is like the start. Suggestion to them: what would be a light, not asking for your full framework secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
But let's say a starter framework to say, okay, here's where you should, the accounts you should open, and some mindset and thoughts you should put together to get started, and maybe some tools you could use to do that.
I would definitely start with LinkedIn and Threads.
Okay.
For the audience that you just described, if we're going to limit it to two,
Right.
if you've got bandwidth, I would probably expand and add some of the other profiles. I would certainly create a presence on all of the major social networks. Have a Facebook page, have an Instagram profile, have a YouTube channel, an X profile for sure. But the ones that you're going to focusing on are LinkedIn and Threads. Threads, for the reasons I really just intimated at before. That's where you're going to be able to have some conversations with people who are interested in the same topics that you're interested in. And that could be 100% professional or a mix of professional and personal. Me, it's always a mix. And typically, if people have known me or followed me for years, they know that Star Wars is typically the personal interest that I talk about on social media the most. And that's deliberate and it's strategic. It's not the only thing that I'm interested in personally, but that's the one thing that I typically go to as a personal interest that allows me to connect with people, have a personal conversation and presence. And it's easily identifiable. If people look at my background, they might see some Star Wars elements. And Threads is a great example of how everything I've said is true up until this point. There's a new show that's out with Star Wars called The Acolyte. And it's interesting because it's polarizing. There are a lot of people who are being very vocal in their dislike and their outright hatred for this show. You go to Threads, if you post about it in a positive way, you'll attract people who are interested in the show and can have a really positive conversations about it, or the reverse is also true. So I like Threads for that algorithmic reason. It's going to be very easy for you to connect with people who are interested in your topics and might be interested in you professionally if you're sharing some value and demonstrating some authority. LinkedIn, I think, is essential for anybody who is in that category of entrepreneur, solopreneur, professional services provider that you mentioned. You have got to have a LinkedIn presence. You've got to have a great profile on LinkedIn that speaks to the challenges and the pains that your target audience is going through and how you help them solve those and go through that journey. It shouldn't be an ad. It should be an explanation, a story of yourself, ideally the people that you've helped. But if you're just starting out, I understand that might be a challenge in and of itself. If you are literally on day zero of your brand new business, you probably don't have case studies, you probably don't have testimonials, you probably don't have a lot to share in terms of how you've helped other people. But presumably you've got some experience and some perspectives. That's why you're starting this business. So share what you can on LinkedIn and start sharing content, start sharing tips, suggestions, recommendations, stories. If at all possible, find ways to tell those stories. It's just kind of going to be the ongoing thread, I think, of this whole conversation, because it's how you started it so well, Joe. It's about telling those stories of how you've overcome certain things. And even if it's just you personally, how you've overcome these things that you're helping other people overcome, but you've done it yourself, great. Share those stories. It's a good place to start. And use that as a platform to start connecting with other people and building that audience. The other thing that I'll add to that is that social networks in general are rented land.
Mm.
You don't own your profile. You don't own the social network. You don't control the space in which your social profile exists, which means when I'm posting to LinkedIn, as an example, I don't control the posts that are above or below me. I don't control what's in the header or the sidebars or the footer. That's all owned by LinkedIn. It's all controlled by LinkedIn. Other random posts are before me and below me, and they're different for every person who sees those posts. And I can't advertise or promote anything else about me outside of that post. And LinkedIn could decide to shut down my profile today, and there'd be nothing that I could do about it. So you want to have owned property. You want to have a place to call home, and that means a website, and that means some kind of content that you're creating and distributing that you control that, whether that's a blog or a podcast or videos, whatever that is, that needs to be the core of your marketing strategy. And the social networks are where you grow audience, you grow community, to your point, and that's where you can distribute that content once you create it. You don't want to live on LinkedIn or Threads or some other profile, because personally, I don't want to have happen to you what happened to me when I lost my Google Plus profile and the 250,000 followers I had there.
Wow. Well said. Well said. Lots to investigate there for sure. And I think putting in the dedicated time, you will see a return. And as Gary Vee has said, a great story will always find its way. Always, if it's a great story, right?
Right.
So get those stories out there, the storytelling. Now, AI is a big piece of tech when it comes to creating content, editing, posting, organizing, all that good stuff there. How do you think technology as a whole is reshaping the way we understand and reach our audiences compared to 5 years ago?
I find it fascinating. And I mentioned at the outset how I've pivoted multiple times in my business. I was focused for a while on specifically social media marketing. I focused for a while on content marketing. When the pandemic hit, I pivoted into virtual events. I've been doing virtual events for years. And so I started helping other businesses with their virtual events. And then I pivoted into influencer marketing, and now I've pivoted into AI. And that may feel like a lot of pivots over a decade. The reality is I am paying attention to the needs of the industry and the needs of the marketers that I tend to serve, or the businesses that I tend to serve. And today their need right now is to understand AI, because this is not a fad. It's not like networks like Blue Sky or Clubhouse that they're interesting, they're fun when they first came out, but they're not going to last. AI is different. It's not a social network that you could choose to participate in or not. It's an approach to society. It's because I say it that way because it's even more than technology. It transcends technology. It's an approach to society that is going to be integrated and layered in and revolutionize every single aspect of our lives. It is literally the fourth revolution that we're going through as a society over the past 150 to 200 years. And because of that, it begs the question, how do I personally need to change what I'm doing? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to adapt? And where do I need to change and pivot? Because every one of you listening, you are already using AI, whether you realize it or not. And if you're not yet actively learning about AI and using AI, you will soon need to be, particularly if you're in marketing or some of the other digitally focused industries, because they're being impacted the swiftest by AI, because that's the easiest thing. It's easy to start using AI to impact your marketing. It's easy to start using AI to automate things that are manual but digital today. Pretty much anything that is done on digital, like spreadsheets, right, or databases, if it's manual today, it can and will be automated by AI tomorrow. And if your job is to enter data into a spreadsheet today, sorry, you probably won't have a job within a matter of months. That doesn't mean that you can't adapt, though. You can't figure out ways that AI could automate and replace some of the things that you're doing today and leave you free to do other things. Customer service is a great example of an industry that's being revolutionized today by AI, because a lot of the things that customer service agents do is answer the same questions in the same way day after day after day. And if it's something that you've done 3 times and can imagine yourself doing 10 times, that's a job worthy of artificial intelligence. Because artificial intelligence is fantastic at doing the same thing over and over again with excellence and scalability, which leaves you as an individual human free to spend more time actually picking up the phone and talking to our customers or prospects. I mean, imagine what business wouldn't be better served by giving more human being time to their most important customers, right? That would have just an amazing impact, I think, on churn and customer retention and lifetime value. So that's where AI is having a huge impact. And again, I just want to stress, it's pervasive and it's everywhere, and it's having just such a deep impact on every aspect of our lives. All the devices that we use today are having AI baked in, from Apple Intelligence to Microsoft's Copilot and more. We're all going to have these amazing tools and agents and other things that can help us in our day-to-day lives. So take the time now to start learning more about how AI can help you, how AI can be a servant or an intern, or however you want to look at it, and prepare yourself and prepare your role so that you are ready and not caught unprepared.
Yes, yes. Well, that is complimenting. Geez, you probably hit all the objections that I have on sales calls too. Of, well, I do it this way and I do it this way, and a common thing I ask: what do you spend most of your week doing? What activities? Well, I'm following up on emails doing this. I'm sending emails doing this. I update my pipeline by doing this, and I do the workflow automations and service learning and brand identity learning and adaptation there. If all that can be done in the background properly and set up and managed, and the owner can focus on what they love doing, and as you just said, connecting with people more and showing that value, the Threads mindset that you had there, right? The same with all the platforms, just connecting with people one-on-one. Imagine, right, what the possibilities could be with all that time focus on the area that helps grow your business. I couldn't agree more. I may just take a reel out of that piece right there and just post it 20 times a year on repeat. A snippet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing that with my own podcast. I've run 6 podcasts. I don't have time to do 6 podcasts worth of interviews every week and do all the prep and do all the editing and do all the promotion. It's not possible. That's why most people, regular sane people, have just 1, maybe 2 podcast shows that they're doing. But thanks to AI, I can automate so much of that process and leave me free to focus on finding great guests and conducting the interview, because that's where I bring true value. It's not filling out a form. It's not coming up with questions. It's not all the other little things that have to happen to actually create the podcast content itself, right? A lot of that can be automated by AI. So that's how I'm using AI today, for instance.
Well said. Well said. And I'm sure people can learn a lot more I'm going to put your link to your LinkedIn below as well, and to your site. I'm sure there's loads of additional education people can learn from that AI adaptability and what's next, right? So,
right.
Next question I have for you. I'm a big advocate for strategic thinking. And when I say thinking outside the box, right, there's 6 sides to a box. So are you thinking outside just one side of that box? Or maybe you go, there's thinking into left field, there's thinking into right field, right? How can you think outside the box in multiple different angles to attack the market? So with that, what are some of the key skills or knowledge that are most important for success in this industry in the next few years?
Communication is number 1, the absolute number 1 skill. And it's that way because not only are we talking to humans, but we're also now talking to artificial intelligence. And we're having to do so in a way where the best communicators are going to be able to utilize artificial intelligence in the best way. So learn how to communicate, learn how to And I don't mean just like, be able to type great sentences without having to use Grammarly, right? But
Sure,
being
sure.
able to create and articulate what you want to accomplish, have a goal mindset. That's a fantastic way to approach conversations. It's a fantastic way to approach ChatGPT. If you want to get a great output, you mentioned earlier, garbage in, garbage out. If you want to get great output from ChatGPT, you need to invest the time up front in telling ChatGPT who you are, what you want to accomplish. Same thing happens in business and in relationships. Obviously, you don't want to be transactional with conversations with real live people, but you do want to be able to hold a great conversation, be able to communicate professionally. So that's, I think, a huge thing that's coming. And if you're trying to think about outside the box, you might want to think about, how can I improve my own conversational and communication skills? How can I improve? Who can I learn from that would make me a better communicator? I invest in like masterclass and study Chris
Oh
Voss or
yeah.
something like that, right? You can
Big
also
fan, Hank.
think, yeah, he's fantastic. It's such a refreshing approach to communicating. We're talking about Chris Voss, who was an FBI negotiator. Now he's got tremendous books and classes and things that you can learn from him. Another approach would be to think about who you are targeting in terms of your audience and have conversations with them. And again, thinking outside the box, think about, how are the other ways that you can help and approach them? What are some of the other challenges and problems and pain points that they're experiencing that maybe you've never really talked to or about before, but you might incorporate them into your message? Another thing you can think about is, what is your message? What is your brand? What is your brand story? How many of us have really taken the time to think about our brands in terms of our own brand story? What is the journey that we have gone on? And not just when we started, how we started. Yeah, I graduated from college and I was in marketing, so I opened an agency. That's not a story. That's just a repetition of facts, right? Why are you doing it? Who are you trying to help? How are you helping them? How are you walking alongside your target audience on their journey? And what are the values that you are incorporating into that process? That's the makings of an actual brand story. And how are you enveloping that in everything that you do? I'm looking at revamping our case studies at Agorapulse, where I work full time, and realizing that we haven't done what I just said. We're not bringing our brand story into our case studies. The case studies are all about the customer, which they should be, right? But we don't talk about why the things that they're doing with our tool are important to us, why we are so invested in their success. That's the kind of thing that you could be thinking about, again, thinking outside the box.
Mhm.
Why are we doing the things that we're doing, and how can we do a better job of injecting that into our messaging? These are just some examples of things that you could be thinking about that are different from the normal day-to-day of, I want to market my business. Here are my solutions. Here's my target audience. Let me go out and talk to them. Those are 3 ideas.
I love it. I love it. Very well said. I think what complements that too, I was taught by my mentor not too long ago, because let's see, I'm my own worst client, right? The messaging of my own brand is often the one I neglect the most. But the question he asked me was, Joe, in going through your funnel and understanding uh, your core value, what I'm not reading too much of is, why did you start the business? Why? That one word. And then when I start elaborating on why, then it goes, okay, I get it. Just as you said right there. I'm not just a market. Yeah, I graduated and I just decided I followed some guru on YouTube and I press go. I have a story. Why isn't that story told? Aha, there we go. Answering the why.
Yep.
So
Simon
important.
Sinek, start with why.
That's right. That's right. You got it. Okay, looking towards the future. Emerging trends that will redefine the industry in the next decade. What do you? Now, there's been. You say Google Plus? Is that what it was? I don't know what that is, but that's
Yeah,
that
you
was
never
called,
used
right?
it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I mean, geez, I mean, I remember when Vine was super hot and then dead.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It goes. It was all over. I mean, you've seen a lot over the last decade, 20 years. I'm sure more than that. What do you think is going to happen 10 years from now? And how do we stay? what kind of trends do you think will happen?
10 years is obviously a challenging perspective to try to go that far out. I often wonder if we'll even have social networks in 10 years, because as a society, our entire way of engaging with other people and with machines and the digital tools that we use and the platforms that we use will be radically different from what it is today. It really will look like science fiction in comparison. We'll have, visual displays and audio interfaces and wearable devices and that sort of thing. And we already are starting to develop these artificial assistants that we can talk to, like Pi, and within a matter of months, ChatGPT and so on. And they're aware of who we are. They're aware of our day to day. They know our calendar. They know our emails. They know our to-do list and that sort of thing. And they become true assistants that we can engage with. And the other aspect that's happening today is this concept of agents, where these are artificial intelligence entities that allow different systems to communicate with each other in ways that allow us as individuals to finally be a little bit more free and not have to log into 2 or 3 different places and do 2 or 3 different things that are all part of the same workflow, the same process, but because they're different platforms or different tools that aren't necessarily integrated and connected, we have to do that manual work. Agents will be able to do that. So for instance, you talked about pipeline, right? Where if you're engaging with someone on LinkedIn, maybe there's a Salesforce connection there that allows them to see that, or maybe a HubSpot connection, right? And maybe you've got an automation that puts them into a pipeline, but they're not going to add it to a spreadsheet or do something else like that. Agents can do a lot of that for us, where you have that initial conversation and then the agent understands, oh, these are the 5 steps now that we've got to do. I mean, think Zapier, only it's much more seamless, right? And it can be triggered with a word audibly. So to take that out 5-10 years, things are going to be so different than they are today. And it makes me wonder whether we'll still use a lot of the social networks that we're using today, which is a little bit of a frightening thought, considering, like I said, I work full-time for a company called Agorapulse, where our entire business is centered around social media marketing and social media management. So I do often wonder what that will look like in years from now. There are new platforms that are coming up. I mean, we talked about Threads. Threads literally turned 1 year old this month in July when we're recording this. So it's possible for new platforms to continue to develop that will revolutionize how we engage with each other as human beings. I don't know that it's going to be the metaverse. I don't have a lot of stake in that, but I do wonder. Yeah, so I know I don't have a good answer for the question. I don't have a good vision for 10 years from now, except that I do believe it will be radically different from how we engage with platforms today. I don't think it'll be a lot of handheld devices or desktop devices.
Agreed.
I think it'll a lot of be, heads-up display, holograms, virtual displays, a lot of audio and visual interaction, way more than what we do today.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can't put a finger on one specific thing, but what I don't want to be in my role in my business and in the marketing industry is how many folks do we see now where, look at generation gaps with technology, right? How many people my folks are okay with an iPhone and know a little bit, right? But how many of those like tech people who were tech people and kind of understood the industry I don't know now. And even I look back today, or like right now at this current role, there are 12-year-olds coding at like rapid speeds that comprehend this stuff. And I'm like, am I that 80-year-old on an iPhone by looking at this person who's, my God, I just can't happen. I have to be on top of this. So final question with that, with your business, even my business and all marketing businesses, how do we stay ahead of the curve?
Well, I think the first truth that we all need to recognize is what you just intimated. And that is that the older we get, it's not that we struggle necessarily with technology, but the real truth of the matter is we don't have the kind of time to invest in learning new technology that younger generations have. My 9-year-old has all the time in the day to play with apps on her iPhone and her iPad. And eventually she's going to supersede me in her skill level with a lot of those kinds of apps because she's got nothing to do. She doesn't have responsibilities to a business or multiple businesses. She doesn't have clients. She's 9. 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds, even 20-year-olds have different sets of responsibilities, yes, but they still don't necessarily have the same commitments that you do once you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, and above. So that's a truth. And we need to recognize that because we also need to be fair to ourselves. That me, as a recent 50-something, I don't have the same kind of time to invest in learning new technology as a 20-year-old. That said, what we all need to do is take a step back and look at this technology that's unfolding and try to determine where to best invest our time. Let's talk about AI for just a second. Right now with AI, we're at a point where we will soon be able to just have a casual conversation with the artificial intelligence of our choice, whether it's a ChatGPT tool or some other tool. And it's increasingly being layered and baked into everything that we do, all the devices. If you're paying attention to the industry, ChatGPT has come to an agreement with Apple. So Apple devices will have OpenAI's ChatGPT baked in along with their own up-leveled Siri and that sort of thing. And Microsoft is doing similar things. Amazon is doing similar things. And my point there is investing time today in learning prompt engineering and becoming a prompt engineering expert probably isn't the best use of your time. 6 months ago, that was all the rage. But today, we're seeing less and less need for prompt engineering because you could simply talk to the AI and ask them, hey, this is what I want to accomplish. Help me do that. Help me help you come up with the best set of instructions. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we're also seeing these AI agents emerge and become more prolific. This is truly emerging technology that we're talking about today, right? But within 6 months, that's going to be the norm. And agents are going to be there to help us do all these different tasks. So you're not going to have to do a lot of extensive custom prompts to do a really intense, long series of tasks because there will be agents in place and the AI will have the competency and the context to know all those things. So it takes some doing, but it's worth investing some time up front when you're looking at any technology, whether it's social networks, whether it's AI, whether it's marketing automation, something else. Take the time to think about and ask questions. What do I really need to know and understand today? And what will serve me best in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months?
Well said. Well said. So yes, I just to cap that off too, message for all. Yes, you can start pressing record and act now, but to have a strategy in place, either one of two things, right? Understand the market, understand your message, understand the value, understand the automation tactics and such and platforms to go about doing so and the message going out. Or you could also hire someone that could coach you and guide you along the whole process and give you the ultimate framework to do so. But to go in it blindly and to think, I'll just figure it out without doing any homework, I think a lot of people do that and they try. I've tried. I've done all the things right. There are key strategists like yourself, Mike, out there that could really help a lot of folks. And I'm excited for sharing this entire podcast with more and more people so that way they get the message of social media marketing and getting their story out there.
Thank you, Joe. The one thing I'll add to that is a difference between AI and social media is that with social media, if I go live on video, that's public. I'm in front of everybody and I may not want to make a mistake. I may not want to look silly. I may not want to act as though this is my first time doing that. With AI, it's private. So if you haven't used AI, open up ChatGPT, download Pi, one of the apps on your phone, and just start having a conversation with the Pi. It's private. It's not public. You can't break it. You can't really make mistakes. That's an easy way to learn. So when it comes to AI, definitely just hit the button.
I love it. Well, wise words and some tremendous education here from you, Sir Mike. I certainly thank you for sharing your most valuable asset, which is your time, and to share that with me, and I can share that with others. It's been a great joy and an honor. Thank you again for your time here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for all of you for listening.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone.